It is Podcast Tuesday. What's going on, guys? My name's Lockie, and this is the Coastwatch Football Podcast, the show where every Tuesday we sit down here to do a deep dive into the big talking points around the A-League and my team, the Central Coast Mariners. Of course, a lot of positives to talk about of the Mariners this week after we defeated Sydney FC 2-0. And of course, we did the post-match interviews with the fans, the first time doing that. So that was a really fun video. So I'll make sure to link that down in the description if you want to check that one out. I've also got the match reaction video that I did for the Mariners game, deep dive into my reactions and analysis on that game. I also did a match reaction to the Jets game where they defeated Wellington 4-0 because that was probably the most convincing performance we've seen in the A-League so far. And of course, the A-League Round 4 review is out where I really go into each of the games and give my thoughts and opinions on all of the results and performances. So this podcast is nice because it's a bit more slower paced. It's for the hardcore fans. And I know there's a lot of people who have sort of been sticking by the podcast we're coming up to a year. We're coming up to a year since the first episode. We started it round one, the start of last season, which was towards the end of December last year. So crazy. Time flies, man. But yeah, and of course, I want to say a big shout out to Dean and Riley who featured on the podcast last week. At first time getting a couple fans on the podcast as well. And you're going to be seeing that throughout the rest of the season, fans jumping on to have their say. But every now and then, you'll also have me here right now because this is going to be a very special solo Q&A episode, once again, jumping into your questions. Because honestly, there's a lot of talking, round by round, there's more and more talking points coming out of the A-League. So we're going to dive into some of the big sort of stories coming out of the A-League, I guess, and the narratives, which is always what I love about football. That's one of my favorite things, the narratives around it, the stories around the game, players who have, come back from adversity, or, the young players who have, risen up from out of nowhere, stuff like that. Anyway, first of all, we're going to talk about Western Sydney Wanderers, and this question comes in from Danny on Twitter. Thanks, Danny, for sending in the question. Thoughts on Western Sydney Wanderers? Carl Robinson just not getting the results. Western Sydney Wanderers have a strong team. Maybe is it them not gelling correctly, or is it tactics? Look, it's hard to say. So Western Sydney Wanderers, it's funny when you look at their league results. They're 1 win, 2 draws, 1 loss. Now, here's the thing, and I brought this point up. I featured on the Football Capitals episode of the A-League review, the A-League wrap-up video this week, and I talked about a similar thing. Like, if it was any other team in the A-League, there wouldn't be as much concern. Like, if it was maybe Perth or Brisbane that were picking up that sort of form, there wouldn't be as much drama. And it really isn't that bad when you look at it. It's like, okay, they've only lost 1 game in their opening 4, and they've looked like defensively pretty solid overall. But again, speaking to some of the guys on that show that I did, and it's up on the Football Capital YouTube channels, from a Wanderers point of view, like they're coming off the back of last season where they underperformed, once again, and Carl Robinson is running out of time quickly. The getting knocked out of the Cup by an NPL side, all respect to Apia Leichhardt. Getting, Wanderers expect better. This is, Western Sydney Wanderers won the Asian Champions League, less than a decade ago now. So this is, and that's a big factor as well when it comes to Western Sydney Wanderers. You have to consider that they were so successful in the early years. Made a grand final in their first season. They've made 3 grand finals over the first 5 years. And of course, winning the Asian Champions League. This is a team that, if you were there in the early days, it was a successful time. And now I don't think they've made the finals for 4 or 5 years now. So, and on top of that, they've got the best squad they've had in years now, with the likes of Tom Mohamed, Dimitri Petratos, Ugarkovic, Antonis, Keanu Bacchus, Rich Williams at the back, Adama Traore. These are all like classy, experienced players. And why is it not clicking? It's hard, and as I said, there isn't like a simple answer to it, and a lot of blame, I guess, is being put on Carl Robinson, and you probably have to look at someone like him, because if you've got a team that good, like so many players in that Wanderers team would be star players in any other A-League team. You know what I mean? They've got so many star players, so many big name players, A-League speaking. But it's just not clicking for them. If you watch their performance against Macarthur where they lost 2-0, Dimitri Petratos looks low on confidence. And it's making me look a bit silly now because I hyped up Dimitri Petratos heading into the season. I was like, Wanderers are going to kill it. Dimitri Petratos is going to tear it up. I think in one podcast, I think I even gave him a shout for like potential Johnny Warren medal winner, which is now certainly looking unlikely. So I think from a Western Sydney Wanderers, and they even changed system this year. The last season they're playing 3 at the back. This season they're playing 4-2-3-1. So it's not that Carl Robinson is trying something different. He's trying things, but so far it's not working. None of their performances have been convincing. Even the 2-0 win against Wellington Phoenix, those 2 goals were kind of, I guess, lucky goals, or like not the most convincing goals. You know what I mean? So for Western Sydney Wanderers, where does the answers lie? I'm not sure, but all I can tell you is I reckon if Western Sydney Wanderers aren't in the top 6 by the halfway point of the season, Carl Robinson has to go. Carl Robinson has to go because you can't have a team that good on paper and be outside the top 6. This is a team that should be challenging the likes of Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory, the teams at the top, and they don't look like doing that at the moment. None of their performance has been really convincing in attack. They haven't looked very cohesive in attack despite the big names. So look, we could go on and on, but the bottom line is we don't know what's going wrong at Western Sydney Wanderers. The simple answer is maybe there needs to be a change of leadership in a coaching role to get things sorted, because the team is there, but the performances aren't, and the fans seem to be fed up at this point. Interesting one here from Aiden. So Aiden on Twitter asks, if you could redo your season ladder prediction, how would you do it now? Now, I've actually been asked this a few times, and I didn't necessarily want to do this because I sort of want to. I'd love to just stick by my word, just be like that's it, and not change it. And I am doing that. I'm sort of sticking by it and like hoping that I can be somewhat right. I don't think I would be right at all by the end. But if I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a couple of teams that maybe I would change now, and one of them is probably Sydney FC. I'd probably pull Sydney FC down. I put them up in second again. That my top 2 again was Melbourne City and Sydney FC. Look, Sydney, simply the injury to Luke Bratton, which is proving to be really an issue for them. He's such a unique player. He's such a talented player. Sydney FC I think will make the top 6. They've got enough quality to recover from this poor start, but they won't finish top 2, especially when some of the other sides are looking good at the moment. In West United, Macarthur FC, Melbourne Victory, they won't finish top 2. I'm going to say that pretty confidently now. I can certainly see them finishing top 4. Maybe 3rd, 4th if they can sort of turn things around, and some of the star players like Lafondra, Ninkovic, can really switch it on. Bobo, hopefully he can have a big goal return for them as well. So, look, from a Sydney FC point of view, it's concerning how they're performing at the moment, because we're used to them playing. We're used to them being one of the most dominant sides in the A-League, and they have been for a very long time. And I tell you what, this sort of segues nicely. I'll come back to the latter stuff, but I do want to talk about some other questions now that we're talking about Sydney FC. And we've got some similar questions coming in from Miles, Cooper, and Alexander on Instagram. Stuff like, do you see Sydney FC as a threat for the title this season after the recent defeat to the Mariners? And yeah, it's hard. It's early on in the season. So it's very early on in the season. But the way that the Mariners, especially early in that first half, just were cutting through Sydney FC, it looked too easy. It looked too easy at times. Sydney FC did come back in the second half against the Mariners. Weren't able to find the goal, of course, but yeah, it's a similar thing. It's like, where do the answers lie? Because they've still got the star players there in, as I mentioned, Lafondra, Ninkovic, Bobo up front. So there's goals there for Sydney FC. Costa Barbarouses, I think, is out with injury for another few weeks. But, the injury to Luke Bratton is a massive one, so that's really going to be detrimental to them. But it's interesting. Going back to West Sydney Wanderers, they don't really have any big injuries at the moment. They've pretty much got a full-strength squad, and they're not performing. So anyway, with Sydney FC, will they challenge for the title? I think this is the season where they do drop away, but they won't drop away by a lot. I think some people are maybe calling for them to drop out of the top 6. I'd be surprised if they dropped out of the top 6. But yeah, interesting one, Sydney FC. So let's go back to the ladder prediction though, and any teams I would sort of shift around. Look, I'm going to stick with it for now. Maybe another team that I would shift, maybe Western United up a couple spots. I put them just missing out on the top 6. I would probably shift them into the top 6 now. Maybe at this rate, replace the Wanderers. I think I'll put Wanderers in 4th. And I'd probably shift Western United up there now as well. Aside from that, I don't want to change too much else. Wooden Spoon is Wellington Phoenix. I'm still okay with that, even though they have looked, better than I expected. In my bottom three, I put Brisbane and Adelaide, and so far those two teams are down towards the bottom of the ladder as well. So I'm gonna keep it as it is. But those are a couple of things that I might change, like when it comes to Western United and Sydney FC, maybe two teams I'd tweak a little bit. But overall, I don't want to touch it. I sort of want to, hopefully by the end, because again, it's early stuff. It's very easy to see, Sydney FC down the bottom. MacArthur on top. This is going to change big time. And we're seeing that week by week. It's teams are jumping up and down. And, a single result can sort of flip your fortunes. An interesting question here from Matthew on Instagram. Matt, thanks for sending in the question. Melbourne City in trouble, struggling this season. I don't think so. Obviously they were looking a little bit shaky in the early rounds. Losing a 2-goal lead to Adelaide and drew there. Lost to Western United at home. And then they just got the win against Perth Glory in the previous round. That they scored a late goal, Matty Atkinson, in the 88th minute. So look, I think it's okay for Melbourne City. I think if you compare them to Sydney FC, there's still, Melbourne City look a lot more convincing, and the performances have been pretty good. I feel like City aren't performing at maximum capacity yet. I feel like maybe they're performing at 60 or 70% their full potential. Matt Leckie has been pretty disappointing so far. He hasn't been terrible by any means. He hasn't flopped. I'm not going to say he's flopped. It's early days still. But when you look at that potent City attack, and we were talking about it heading into this season, Matt Leckie's a player who sort of hasn't really got clicking yet. Andrew Naboot looks good. Jamie McLaren, a couple of half chances here and there. Hasn't been too involved as of yet. Matt Leckie's the one that sort of needs to step up a little bit, in my opinion, because it's there for City, and they're playing a similar system to, pretty much the same system, identical system to what they were playing last year in their championship winning year. But they're not quite up there. They're not quite clicking as they did last season, but it was a similar thing to last year, where like the first few rounds they were losing games. Jets beat them, Mariners beat them last year early in the season. Adelaide beat them, so I think it'll be a similar thing where they'll switch on after a few rounds. Matt Leckie settling in, these players gelling even more. Picciarelli, this Italian midfielder who I don't think has even featured in the A-League yet, so maybe he'll inject a little bit of quality for Melbourne City. So are they struggling? I don't know if I'd say they're struggling. They're just underperforming. You know what I mean? So. Keep an eye on them, because they certainly will. They certainly will pick it up, and that segues nicely into a question here from Joel on Instagram. Who's winning the Melbourne Derby? I'm so excited for this game, man. These are two heavyweights this season. These are two heavyweights, maybe the two heavyweights in the A-League. The two biggest teams, the two teams with the most quality. Dude, it's hard to say. But look, I'm gonna just go out. And say I'm going to go Melbourne victory in a close one. I'm going to say victory 2-1. I think it's going to be a Tony Popovich masterclass. He's very good at managing those big games, not grand finals. But for Melbourne victory, I think, especially after coming off that win against Adelaide United, which was an important win after they lost the previous round to Perth Glory. And when you look at Melbourne City, as I mentioned just earlier, not quite performing at full throttle, I can see victory just snatching the win here. Just maybe 2-1. So, look, it could easily go either way, and both teams have so much quality and so much potential, and that's why it's going to be such a high, intense. It's going to be an intense clash between two high quality sides and two great coaches as well. Two of the best coaches in the league at the moment, Patrick Snorbo and Tony Popovich. So, very excited for that one. Let's jump into some other questions now. We've got had a lot of questions, as I mentioned, so many talking points coming out of this week. I want to talk about this one actually, though. Zachary on Instagram asks, do Brisbane Roar have what it takes to turn it around? Now, Brisbane Roar winless to start of the season. They sit bottom of the ladder. They've only scored 1 goal in 4 games. They've changed formation twice already. They started the season with their usual 3 at the back. They were playing a sort of a different setup and attack. It looked like more of like a 5-2-1-2, whereas last season they were playing with sort of 5-2-3, sort of 3 attackers. And last year, Wenzel Halls, Joey Champness, Riku Danzaki. These guys were tearing it up last year. Brisbane. They were a couple games away. They made it and got knocked out in the elimination final last season. But they don't look the same at all this year. Injuries aren't helping them. Captain Tom Aldred has missed the start of the season. They need him to come back ASAP. So that's a concerning one. But yeah, touching on what I said before about the change of formation against Western United, interestingly, Warren Moon shifted styles, which I don't think we've seen him do, in the past year or so. He usually is pretty, set on his three at the back. They played more of it was sort of like a hybrid 4-3-3 sort of thing. They had, up front, Lascano made his A-League starting debut, Ivanovic on the wing, Miliusnic in the wing, and then in midfield, there was Akbari, Jay O'Shea, Jesse Daly. Look, it's an okay team on paper. There's not maybe as much experience and quality, proven A-League quality compared to other sides. And I think that's going to hurt them this season. When you look, especially this A-League, we know it's going to be the most competitive season we've seen to date, and it already is proving to be that. If you don't have the quality, if you lose games early, you will drop away. And I'm backing my Brisbane to finish bottom three this year prediction, because I said it heading into this season, just losing those key players. Macaulay Gillespie, another huge departure at the back that I think maybe a lot of people have forgotten about as well. They're relying on the youngsters, Kai Truin, Mlinaric, this guy on loan from Sydney FC, Luke Ivanovic, Jesse Daly. And look, no doubt all these guys, young players, they've got a lot of potential to grow and can get better. And it is early in the season. But it's tricky. They need someone like, funnily enough, going back to Western Sydney Wanderers, they could take, maybe Dimi Petratus another stint at Brisbane Roar, or, another class midfielder like someone like Terry Antonis from Wanderers as well. So can Brisbane turn it around? Look, I'm going to say no. There's not enough in that side right now to convince me that they will. Against Western United, they looked lackluster. They ran out of ideas when they got into the final third. It's a concern for Warren Moon. It's a concern for Brisbane fans. They need to win ASAP. They're taking on Perth Glory at home. They will view that as a winnable game, even though Perth Glory are going to be a tough team to face this season. So, I'm concerned for Brisbane. They're the one side. There's so many sides where there's positives. Even if you look at the other teams that are maybe starting to slip a little bit now, Adelaide sort of dropping away. We've already touched on Sydney FC. Those teams have positives and can bounce back. For Brisbane Roar, it's going to take a lot for them to bounce back. And they've got they're relying on youth a lot this year. Henry Hoare, Jez Lofthouse, of course, Alex Parsons. Start Alex Parsons. Why are they not starting Alex Parsons? The guy is a class player. So, look, it's concerning for Brisbane. So, can they turn it around? My answer is no at the moment. So, early years, and I could be proven wrong. But yeah, man, we're going to talk about who's going to get the wooden spoon. And comes in from Pumpkin Rider on Instagram. Who's going to win the wooden spoon? And I did say Wellington Phoenix. I'm going to stick with that. I'm sorry, Wellington Phoenix fans. I'm sorry. But I'm going to stick with that. I think, despite, as I mentioned earlier, they have looked okay. They've looked pretty good to start the season. Defeated my Mariners in round 2, but got smashed by Jets on the weekend. But I don't think that was Wellington's fault defensively. I think it was more Jets just killing it in attack. So I'm going to stick with Wellington Phoenix. But honestly, Brisbane are in there now, man. Actually, if I had to compare those two teams, I think there's more positives coming out of Wellington Phoenix compared to Brisbane Roar. I think Wellington Phoenix have a bit more experience and star quality compared to Brisbane Roar. So, could be either of those two sides. So, I'm going to put both of those in for a shout. But honestly, no other team. I wouldn't say Adelaide United. I wouldn't say... Who else? Who's another team? I'm not going to say Sydney FC. But yeah, for me, it's Brisbane and Wellington. I'm going to stick with Wellington. I'm going to stick with my original ladder prediction for that wooden spoon. Let's talk about the Central Coast Mariners right now. There's some good questions coming in from some Mariners fans. This one comes in from Sam Gregory. Who has been our best debut season player for us so far? I assume you're talking about this current season, or not just like debut seasons, like players' debut seasons, in the history of the Mariners. But from this season, because there's so many to talk about just from this season alone, because so many players have made their debut. But it would be absolutely atrocious if I didn't talk about Sir Jacob Farrell. The guy is insane. The guy's so good. And look, look, I mean, if you guys have been watching these episodes for a long time, I'm a big Mariners fan, and I like to talk about the A-League as well. And I try to stay as unbiased as possible when I'm talking about all general things A-League. But look, it's going to be hard for me not to do a half an hour episode on Jacob Farrell alone because I honestly, look, I'll say right now, it's a bold claim. I can't remember being this excited about a new young player ever from the Central Coast Mariners point of view. Like seriously, like thinking back maybe to, the excitement around him reminds me of Mustafa Amini, Tom Rogic. These players who came into the side and were exciting when they got on the ball and were just so impressive. These young guys that had come into the side and tore it up and, showed their skill from day one. And, I'm just trying to think of any other players that I've missed as well. But those are two that stick out for me, sort of Rogic and Amini, two class players from the Mariners from many years ago now. But look, Jacob, and we know where those guys' careers have taken them, to, Socceroos appearances, to playing in Europe. Jacob Farrell is 19. And look, the most impressive thing about Jacob Farrell, and I've talked about it in previous podcasts, but his attitude. The guy's 19, he's got no A-League experience, and he comes in, especially in the F3 derby, and he's got no fear. The guy has no fear. He plays fearless, he plays strong, he goes into challenges strong. It's yeah, dude. Honestly, it's like it's almost giving me goosebumps talking about it because it's so exciting having a young player like that. And look, I feel for someone like Noah Smith who came into the side and again, I did a chat with Noah Smith during preseason, which is on the YouTube channel, and that was great to talk to him, and he seems like a great guy. But he's not getting a look in at the moment, unfortunately, because of how well Jacob Farrell is performing. So, look, debut seasons, who's having the best one so far? Jacob Farrell, far and above. And that's saying a lot because Harry Steele has been fantastic. Max Ballard was fantastic, even though he hasn't started the last two games. Dan Hall was brilliant on the weekend. And I'm very excited to see more of Matt Hatch, Sekenis, Harry McCarthy. Hopefully these guys can get more game time. And look, that's one of my big things coming out of the Sydney FC game. And I talked about it in my match reaction video from the weekend. The fact that so many young guys featured in that squad. Like, this is a squad with very little A-League experience, and we are defeating top sides like Sydney FC. If you're a Mariners fan, you should be very excited about this season. And I'm going to say, I'm going to round out this conversation by saying this. And this is sort of a hot take. And look, I don't put that many hot takes out there. I play it pretty safe. But this Mariners squad at the moment is better than the one from last season. Now, I'd love to, if you're a Mariners fan, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments or on social media. This Mariners squad right now is better than the one from last season. Would you take Benny and Cololo and Cy Goddard over Dan Bowman and Jaden Casella? Look, Gianni Stensness was maybe the exception. He was fantastic for us last year. But honestly, the way Harry Steele and Max Ballard are performing, that was the one concern as well heading into the season. Midfield looking a bit thin in terms of experience and quality. Harry Steele and Max Ballard must have been listening to the podcast because, oh my God, they've been killing it, dude. And I put out a tweet on the weekend during the game. Actually, I was like, Harry Steele's the next Josh Nisbet. Just like this little midfielder who's coming to the side. And again, another guy who's playing without fear, and he's showing quality on the ball. And dude, it's so exciting. It's so exciting that we're embracing youth and that it's working. And look, it's part of the Mariners system. The owners, the chairman, they've made it clear that for the Central Coast Mariners, we're not the most financially well-off club. So it's all about, developing these young players, selling them for big moves overseas, which is fantastic stuff. And obviously we saw that, we saw proof of that last year with Alec Kowal's move to Stuttgart in Germany. So, look, I can guarantee you now a couple of these players at least I think will be scoring overseas moves at this rate. Jacob Farrell almost reminds me of like Libby Kakache, Wellington Phoenix left back from a couple of years ago, who played without fear, who got forward, who even chipped in with a couple of goals. Jacob Farrell scored in debut. So I guarantee you as well, there's probably scouts from clubs in Europe or even Asia watching players like Jacob Farrell, like Harry Steele, like Max Ballard. And we're just lucky we have them now. Maybe I'm getting carried away. Maybe I am getting carried away. But look, I'm excited. And look, I know I'm making a bold claim, but yeah, Jacob Farrell, I haven't been more excited about a player like him in a long time. And I've been supporting the Mariners since I was 9 years old back in season 1. And yeah, this is we're seeing a star left back. one of the best left backs we've ever had in the making. Anyway, getting carried away. Hey, let's talk about some other Mariners stuff. Ryan asks, are the Mariners really starting to gel and put good quality games together? Yeah, and here's the thing, right? None of the Mariners games so far have been poor. I genuinely believe that. And again, that's not me being biased at all. But all of the games have been decent to great, even including the FFA Cup games. Even losing to Wellington Phoenix 2-1, even losing out to MacArthur. All the games we've been good. And we've been in it. The Wellington and MacArthur games, we should have gotten a draw for sure. We deserved a draw. It felt like a draw. Disappointed to come away with losses. It just put a little bit of extra pressure on us heading into this weekend. And you just saw what that did to us. The fact that we were able to step up and start so strong. And I don't want to dive into the game too much because, of course, I did my match reaction video. If you want to check that out on YouTube, and again, all those videos linked down in the description. But look, the performances are there. So is the squad starting to gel? Yes. And as well, a player that I haven't even touched on yet this episode, Mateus Maresh, unfortunately didn't get that goal. I'm so upset that he wasn't accredited for that goal. I don't think he did get the final touch. It was Caceres' own goal for that second goal. But look, he was involved in it. And of course, that fantastic pass for that first goal, for Arena's goal, the assist for Maresh. So great to see him make a positive start at home, because I've got a feeling that he's going to tear it up at home. He looked like he really enjoyed it out there, and he didn't stay out the whole game, so hopefully stays injury-free as well. So look, the performances are there. Yeah, you're right, and just stoked for Nick Montgomery as well. Look, a lot of pressure on Nick Montgomery, it has to be said, not just from Mariners fans, but from the league in general. Everyone knows how good Alan Stajic was last season, and to see Monty come in and, continue, well, from what it seems so far, continue the same level of success. 2 wins, 2 losses so far. And just to touch on the Mariners game this weekend, Western Sydney Wanderers. Wanderers will be hungry for a win. They will be hungry. They've come off the back of 2 consecutive losses in the FA Cup and the A-League. Carl Robinson will certainly have them, will certainly be pushing them for the win. So, but again, I think it's important to get that fast start. I think that's going to be key for us this season, these fast starts for the Mariners. Apply the pressure, especially at home. Like that's the thing I want to see. I want Central Stadium to be the hardest place for A-League teams to come. I want us to pressure sides. I want to give them no time, because that's what we did to Sydney FC, and it worked. And it worked big time. So, and we've got the squad to do it. We've got the players to do it, to apply that pressure, to be physical, and it worked against Sydney FC, and there's no reason why we shouldn't beat West Sydney Wanderers. So look, early prediction for the Wanderers game. Look, I'm going to say 2-1 win. I think Wanderers will sneak in with a goal. They defeated us at home last year. I believe it was Nikolai Muller who grabbed the goal in that game, funnily enough. Does Muller feature this weekend? Hopefully. He's a player that I feel like we keep forgetting he even features. He's even in the Mariners squad, you know what I mean? So yeah, dude. We're going to do a couple more questions. Thanks, guys, for sending in so many of these questions. Harry asks on Instagram, Newcastle to finish top 4 this year. Actually, going back to my ladder prediction, that's a side I forgot about. Maybe bring Newcastle up. If they can, but only if they can continue the performances that they put in. Actually, all the performances they put in so far this season. But if they can continue to play as they did at home against Wellington, then yes, they're going to finish finals. Will they finish top 4? I'm going to say no just yet. I think maybe the defense is going to not help them at times. They have been a little bit leaky at the back, a little bit. The first 3 games, they conceded 2 goals each game. Maybe that will tighten up. I'm not confident enough to say top 4, but I think maybe 5th, 6th. I think Mariners and Jets are currently sitting in 5th, 6th. I think those 2 teams could finish there. I think Mariners maybe 5th, Jets 6th. Yeah, I'm just gonna roll with that for now, maybe. We've got another one in here from J Hawko on Instagram. West United and MacArthur, a poor decision for A-League licenses in front of others. And obviously this dives into the whole conversation around expansion and new teams. And look, all I say on that is that, to be honest, I don't really have many strong opinions on that. Would I have preferred those licenses to go to other regions? Yeah, probably. Maybe, as a lot of people would love, we'd love to see a team in Tassie. Wollongong Wolves would be cool. Canberra for sure. I think it might have been better to go, rather than, for example, for MacArthur, maybe, because we now have 5 New South Wales teams, maybe go for Canberra, Get a team in the capital. Second Queensland team seems to make sense to me. I know those ventures failed early on, but a second Queensland team, those are a few of the shout outs there for me. So, but just to touch on those sides as well, we haven't talked about them this podcast episode, but both those sides performing well. Western United, MacArthur, 3 wins on the trot at the moment after round 4. So, how good. And I'll tell you what, we'll do one more question. Apologies we didn't get around to all the questions. Had a lot sent through. And guys, of course, if you want to send in questions on the Instagram stories on a Monday or on Twitter as well, I'll put up the tweet on Monday. So Hayden asks, best signing of 2021, a nice easy one to finish off with. And look, he didn't play on the weekend, but Leah Lacroix for me, for Western United, has been the signing of the season. He's settled in so quickly and has just bossed it at the back for Western United, a team who has only conceded 1 goal in 4 games. And it's a bit funny, Western United, they're the kings of the 1-0 results. All the games have been 1-0 results. The first one didn't go their way, but last 3 games just 1-0, 1-0, 1-0. And, they got Adelaide, I think, on Friday. I think that could be another 1-0. So, Leah Lacroix at the back for Western United, player of the season. Signing of the season so far. Hey, guys. Once again, thanks for sending in those questions. So yeah, these Q&A episodes will be happening, on and off throughout the season, or some episodes will have some guests featuring on to have more of a roundtable discussion. But yeah, as I've said, this is sort of the casual, sit down, have a chat, deeper discussion, deep dives into some of the big topics surrounding the A-League. Of course, feel free to check out the other videos on the YouTube channel. A lot of stuff happening on YouTube, the post-match fan interviews from the Mariners game on the weekend, the match reactions. Of course, we're doing the A-League predictions videos every single Thursday, so keep an eye out for that one this Thursday, because there's some big games coming up in round 5. Guys, thank you so much for checking out this podcast episode. If you have enjoyed, you can leave it a like, or if you're listening on the podcast platform, you can leave it a rating. That helps out heaps. Make sure you stay subscribed if you want to keep up to all the episodes. Of course, you know that. Have a fantastic week. I really mean that. Have a good one. It is summertime. It is almost Christmas. Got me a little Christmas tree up. Have a good one, guys, and I'll see you next week.